Welcome to Orthodox Christian Theology. This is Craig Truglia, and with me today during the Build the Wall stream is Subdeacon Daniel Kakish. How are we doing, Subdeacon?
How you doing, Craig? Thanks for having me on, as always.
I'm so grateful you're coming on to help fundraise that we could build the wall in Cambodia around the church in Ecumenicity, which was knocked down a little while ago, a few years ago, during eminent domain issues and stuff like that. And these walls have security purposes, and we've had such generous donors. We're $800 away from closing the gap. We have an anonymous donor that will donate dollar for dollar for all donors up to the next 800, because it pretty much hits his 2,500 contribution at that point. So we are trying to bring donors to the table. Links are below for people that want to be generous to the Church of Cambodia, help complete the security around the wall, the church there, so that way we could have a stronger long-term presence in Ecumenicity for the evangelization of the Cambodian people. And so, Subdeacon, are you a believer in the building of walls? Do you think walls bring people to heaven?
Wow, that is a trick question.
He refuses to answer.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. All right, well, let me rephrase the question. So, like, when you crossed the border, was there a wall in your way?
Cross the border to where?
From California to Nevada.
No.
I'm kidding. It's if I remember right, you're born here. It's your parents that immigrated.
Correct.
This is a chill stream, not a super serious stream.
I've never actually been to an Arab country. I would love to go.
I thought you went to Syria once, or Jordan.
No.
I thought you said your allergies went away.
I've been to Turkey 3 times.
Oh, so Turkey allergies go away.
Yes.
So you might actually be Rum. You're not Syrian. That might be nonsense.
Well, my father's side is Rum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the whole clan. We have a lot of priests and bishops with my last name in the Jerusalem Patriarchy.
You know, it shows you that you're betraying your ancestors.
Well, I would say Justinian forced them into it, but it's okay.
Well, you know, there's a little tough love, right? Yeah. You know, the scriptures talk about what father doesn't discipline his children. It's funny because this comes up a lot of our conversations, and like, you have to have a charitable view ultimately of your own church's history, because pretty much after really the mid-2nd century, you start getting into a lot of kind of relatively shady things, because the reality is in the scriptures, the apostles didn't always even get along. And so like, there's never a golden age where everything's perfect. But Justinian is, I would say, one of the most compelling characters in history of Christianity. Just the nature of how he ran things and got things done, and his wife, Saint Theodora, and what exactly she was doing and not doing when it comes to the what later became the Oriental Orthodoxy movement, right? You know, it's.
Yeah, I'm not as hard on Justinian as the mainstream Oriental Orthodox you would see, because like, although like we know like the imperial policies, what they were outside of the borders, he was actually funding our cause. And a lot of people don't know that.
I mean, my feeling is that he felt that he had control over the synods. And so that whatever was occurring was all going to eventually, hopefully, be reconciled in the long term. Mm-hmm. And so that was more the reason to have somewhat friendly relations while you're imprisoning people in Constantinople, like Theodosius, right, of Alexandria. Do I have the right name?
Yes.
And Severus for a while and stuff like that. It's, you know, at least be in good relations to the people that you're imprisoning. It's something where, you know, this is not enough in the English language, where I'm genuinely curious as to how much someone like Theodosius Alexandria was really involved with the with John Attila,
Jacob Baradaeus,
with Jacob Baradai, and et cetera, right? because theoretically, I think at least Jacob, his consecration theoretically is from Theodosius and someone else. But in letters between him and Theodosius, from what I've seen, Theodosius never claims this. So is this something where Theodosius was approving what Jacob was doing, but he actually didn't hands-on consecrate him? And then there's a very interesting whole area of research when it comes to the origination of the episcopacy. I feel that there's just not enough. We don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I think are you familiar with John of Ephesus?
Not right now. I just came back from the county fair and standing in the heat, and so I'm not aware of anything at the moment.
No, it's okay. John of Ephesus goes into detail about these topics from the same time period.
I mean, when he says same time period, he's not someone who writes what are those called? Those long histories, a chronicle like 400 years later.
Not like Michael Robbo. No.
Oh, send me the resources. If it's in English, I'll read it.
Yeah, it's available.
Or at the very least, and something that translates well into AI. If it's Greek, I will say this: Syriac does not translate all that great to AI, at least when it comes to recognizing. This came up because you helped me out with reading a character, and when you pointed it out, and then I won't say his name, but a scholar. I've had a couple Syriac scholars on this show, so like actual scholar, he looked at it and went into the. Who was the writer? But the point is, it was the word "of" in St. Proclus of Constantinople versus whether it was "in" and what was the other word? Some other word in this as or something. And so that being said, it was very simple, provided you knew what you were actually reading on the actual document. Everyone was getting into trouble because they were using AI to read these documents.
Exactly.
And I'm not totally against that because, like, I'd rather know 75% of something, but have I'm going to withhold judgment until like I get actual scholarship on this, or I actually get this in my hands, or a real truth. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'd rather know 75% and be somewhat agnostic to be totally sure than versus not know anything. And so AI really opens up a whole new aspect for someone who's interested in patristics. But I've noticed, and this is not a slight to Agent. This is way bigger than him, honestly. But the young people, I've seen a meme about this, where it's like Zoomers trust everything in AI and they look retarded. And then millennials are the dragon that's looking shifty-eyed. And then the boomers are the retarded dragon that trusts everything with AI. And we need a lot of skepticism with AI. I think it is getting to the point where might hear a bunch of books drop. I really hope not. Oh, they dropped. But like this came out from Uncount Mountain Press, and it's The Errors of the Catholics book. And this was made by fellow Arab George, and he finally did the name reveal. So there you go. You have his full name there. Backwards. How do you pronounce that backwards?
It's not an Arab last name.
He's an Arab though.
Okay.
Maybe it's a fake last name. I don't know. I know he's been trying to protect his name.
There's no P in Arabic.
Is there a B in Arabic? Maybe that's how it got Americanized. I don't know. They were in Ellis Island, right? Hit it at Ellis Island and they changed the name. I got no clue. There's been Arabs here for a long time.
Yeah.
So like this book's been out a real long time in some respects because this has been an ongoing project. He's had PDF versions and all that, and this is the final version. It's 2 volumes actually. This thing's this big, and this is only one of them. You know? But you know what I actually thought about this book? And this is not like, again, I'm published in history of Roman Catholicism. So a book like this, where it's apologetics on a lot of topics, is not necessarily the highest book in my personal priority, right? As like, someone that does academic work. But then you go, you know what? If I just wanted to look at random stuff and random sources for these plethora of topics, how nice of it is it that's in a physical book that was written before AI was made? Because we're getting to the point where there's a lot of fake sources, like literally fake sources with fake PL citations. I won't get too much detail. I've at least had some nice private conversations with Elijah Yassi, which is, improvement based upon years of back and forth with Elijah. And in a very, in an unassuming way, he sent me like, well, what do you think of this? And it was with John Geometries, something about the Immaculate Conception and John Geometries. And where do I have John Geometries here? Where are you? Here we go. So it didn't sound like John Geometries. And how do I know? Because I have this book by John Geometries, Life of the Virgin, which is pretty much his Mariology. And I've gone into a lot of detail in this because there's a lot of academic debate whether or not the life of Mary from St. Maximus is actually it's an abridged version of that book, falsely ascribed, made by St. Euthemius of Athos. And so it's interesting to get into all the details. And if I just botched the name right there, remember, I just came from hours in the heat at the county fair. And this is a chill stream, right? So it's like, these are how we chill. We talk about theology. So the point is, John Geometries does not believe in the Immaculate Conception. In this book, it's very detailed as Mariology. So I was very suspicious, but it had a PG citation. So I went up, followed the citation, and lo and behold, totally fake, right? So I think it was a repost from Kevin Fernandez on X, and it was just a totally fake source, which means people must be writing to ChatGPT. What are the rarest Greek sources that talk about Mariology? And ChatGPT is like a Ouija board, just tells you something fake, and people just accept it. And so to have a book like Errors of the Latins by George from Mount Cat Mountain Press, where it's like, you can have a very encyclopedic source where at least the sources there are on paper, they're not going to change, and they were compiled before AI started distorting everything. Because there's that theory, the dead internet theory. We're going to get into like the fake internet. We're going to have real problems unless you get your hands onto physical manuscripts. Ultimately, with having an authentic information environment. So that's something that really concerns me. We have this from Oscar. Finally deleted AI. I used to use AI to cheat on my work and test, and sometimes it gave me weird sources, a lot of wrong answers. Then one time I told AI to debate itself, Roman Catholic versus Eastern Orthodox, and it got to the Filioque, and it said Western Father mentioned Filioque, and protect the EO, AI said, but we followed the Eastern Fathers, LOL. ChatGPT will make up a whole quote and citation off of asking a very simple question. It's ridiculous, and which is true. I call AI a kaleidoscope, essentially. It's pretty much a Google search, and then it does a word salad from our former vice president and poses it back to you as an answer to a question. So I see you looking at a book there, Subdeacon. What are you looking at?
Yeah, so this is you can't see it because digital background, but it's
Life of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Yeah. So I don't see the rest of it though. It's disappearing.
Yeah, I know. There's a foreword by Sebastian Brock. It's translated by the Indians in Communion with Antioch.
But who wrote it?
So it's a compilation of Syriac texts beginning in the 2nd century about the Virgin Mary and her life. And so it kind of gives the Syriac narrative or story regarding her whole life through the Assumption.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That sounds like a real good book.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Theodosius Alexandria's Dormition homily, for example. Yeah. And so no, there's anyone's done serious Mariological research gets into the Oriental Orthodox sources, the non-Chalcedonian sources. But let me add, something funny came up this morning. So my wife and I are driving to church, and when you're fasting, you're already saying, "What's dinner?" Right? You're thinking about food. And my wife's like, "Oh, I saw this good thing with this nun making made with leeks." And I'm like, "Leeks?" Like, I does it taste good? It's like, I don't know. She asked me, "Does it taste good?" I'm like, I'm not white, and what I meant is I'm not like WASP, right? I'm Italian and Jewish. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't grow up eating leeks. I mean, so my question to you, Subdeacon, is: have you ever eaten leeks?
I don't even know what leeks are.
Yeah, see, that's the answer of someone that just doesn't grow up with that in their cuisine. It's kind of like rhubarb. Like, apparently Western Europeans have like leeks and rhubarb and like these kind of I don't know, their own kinds of foods, which I know nothing about.
Yeah.
You know, because what I wanted to talk about was the food we
Here
grew
for
up with.
white people, and I don't know what that is. Like, what do they call it? Grits is another one.
Oh, grits. Yeah, that's like a cream of wheat made of corn.
And then there's that bread looking thing, but it's actually meat. What is that?
Bread looking. You talk about spam?
No, it's like bread. It's a loaf meat, loaf
Meatloaf?
meatloaf,
Meatloaf?
meatloaf.
Oh, it's a giant meatball.
Yeah, I don't know. So there's a lot of things that they say, and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
You know, it's funny you bring that up because, like, I grew up. I was brought up by my father. He's an Italian guy, auto mechanic. He didn't do that much cooking, and when we got food, literally, we ate spaghetti almost like 5 days a week. It was terrible, right? It's like what Chinese with rice. Like you think of the third world diet, like they're eating nothing but rice and maybe an egg on top. You know, like that's how I actually grew up, but with spaghetti, right? So
Where in Italy is your family from?
Naples. So
Okay.
like there's
Yeah.
a village called Aberos,
Yeah.
which apparently is near Abileno. And weird thing, I'm actually related to David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos. He's my father's second cousin.
Nice.
So if you listen, anyway, the conspiracy theorists are going to find out that my mother is like a part-time actress, and they're going to hear that, and they're going to think, you know, I'm a what they call these things where you're this kind of fifth columnist, like I'm sort of some sort of deep fake Orthodox apologist, I'm an actor or something. But no, David Chase is my father's second cousin. And no, I don't ever remember meeting him. I might have walked past him in a funeral when I was like 15 or something, but otherwise very forgettable. But if you listen to the backstory of Tony Soprano, and they mention the towns that the family's from, I remember this one episode, they say, you know, when your uncle or grandfather, you know, got hit by the ox cart on the hill in Aberos or Abileno, and they mentioned town names in Naples and not Sicily.
Yeah.
So there you go, and it's all from the same family.
And your mom's side is Ashkenazi?
Ashkenazi Jew. Now, see, that's funny because when I was growing up, they said, oh, we're German and French Jew. Because I guess that's the high class Jew. And then one of my mother's first cousin became like a born again Jew. Like he became a rabbi. Like he was in the military and he became like a rabbi and then retired and went to Israel. Because apparently, if you're a religious Jew, you take all your military secrets and bring them in Israel. And so that being said, he did a whole family tree thing. And all the family came from Poland. So they're a bunch of Polak Jews, right? So they weren't the German Jews that I was lied to, that we were German Jews. They were the better Jew, but no, they were a bunch of Polish Jews. You know, it's but it's funny because with and I was recently in the local news in Syracuse.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, I was walking into like the local Target going shopping and they started interviewing me. So my point is there's going to be people that say that I'm not a real Orthodox apologist, all fake. Right. It's all fake. You know, I'm an actor.
The David Chase thing is amazing.
You know, that was pretty cool. You know, I found this out. If you look at, he's actually on Twitter. My father's cousin, Vincent Truglia, he's the first cousin of David Chase. And he does like, if you follow him on Twitter, some political stuff, but he's really a finance guru. He's a multi-millionaire. And so we visited his house, you know, years ago. And, you know, you could tell new money, you know, lots of money, very nice. But that's when it came up. Otherwise, like we otherwise didn't think about it. My father watched Sopranos and have HBO and stuff. And, you know, I'm pretty sure Chase isn't the real last name. So that being said, he wouldn't even know it's the same guy.
Yeah.
So
he said that on a thing one time. They asked him about his last name. He gives the real last name. Forgot what it was. Yeah.
It's well, it's not Truglia. But I'm not sure what on that side, to be honest, because I'm not going to pretend. Oh yeah, me and David Chase are homies, because we're not. You know, if I met him, was at a funeral, and I would have not been thinking anything of it at the time, would not known what he was up to or anything like that. all those years ago. But there you go. I'm 6 degrees separation from Kevin Bacon, I suppose. But so back to what I was saying in my childhood was I grew up eating nothing but spaghetti, right? And then one night a week we'd get egg pastina. You know what pastina is or no?
No.
Yeah, a little macaroni. My father would take chicken broth, throw egg pastina in, and at least it was different. And if you're lucky, you'd get chicken cutlets, and then the Sunday gravy where you get the sauce for the spaghetti, and then the cycle repeats. And so the point of the story is I didn't have like a lot of this American food until I was an adult, even considerably into my adulthood.
Same.
Right? Yeah. I didn't have potato salad for the first time until I was 30.
Yeah, like I
never had potato salad.
In elementary school, I used to see all the kids with their trays, from the cafeteria. I'm like, what is that? What are they eating? Yeah, it was crazy.
So like to me, to eat like white people food or American, whatever you'd call it, was like it's like interesting. It's like foreign cuisine. Because like to me, Italian's not foreign. Like I actually don't even like going to Italian restaurants because I can make better Italian food of my own.
That's awesome.
And at least in New York, maybe in Florida, is still decent. But the Italians have become so Americanized, and the good Italian cooks and people with good Italian palates are aging out. Like I'm 40, right? So like the fact that I'm a throwback to like some sort of Italian palate, and I'm over the hill. How about the people that really know about it, right? They're aging out.
Right.
So to make a long story short, what used to be pretty much the family's favorite restaurant, which was Pasquale's Rigoletto on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, Patsy Rigoletto has been going in and out of jail my whole life. And so I remember my father's 60th birthday was the first time I actually saw Patsy because he got out. Now, if he's still alive, he was back in last time I checked. So again, it's a mob-owned restaurant, but they're not good anymore, is my point. The New York Yankees used to eat there. And so that'd be one of the few. So that'd be one of the few places where. So that'd be one of the few places you would go and like, right, Italian food worth eating, right? Yeah. It's not Olive Garden. Italian food actually worth eating, but it's not good anymore, right? Patsy might not be alive. It's not. He's in jail, and what a way to go though to be that old and in jail. But it's the kind of lifestyle,
Yeah.
It's just a different world.
How come? I feel like the church in Italy in general, like it's fallen out of prevalence. Like, being like the papal center of the world, you would think it would be more pious of people. But my family just came back from vacation from Italy.
Okay.
They're like nobody goes to church or anything over there. It's crazy.
I guess it kind of depends where you are. My impression is of
the north. I think
where were they?
They were in the north. They were in the
north.
Yeah.
North's very European. When I was in Rome itself, I had very Protestant vibes. You'd see these like Renaissance era churches with literally priceless frescoes and stuff, having Bible study. It's kind of a beautiful thing. But like Rome is really not a highfalutin city, like Florence and stuff like that. In southern Italy might be a little more traditional, but I'd say in general, all of Europe has lost a lot of its tradition.
Yeah.
And
I lived in England for 4 months. Same thing. Like
it's a lot of it. It's like an interesting thing is like where you find the really devout people are kind of from those countries, which you go, where is that? And so, like for example, Macedonia, you're not going to find like nicer, more hospitable people. They're very interesting, but like a lot of people watch is like, where exactly is Macedonia? North of Greece, south of Bulgaria, right? So it's like this little country, you can kind of forget that it's there.
Yeah.
And it's, I've heard good things about Georgia, and I'm sure like places like in Ethiopia, I hear that people are coming out the door and stuff like that at these churches. Yeah. So like places which are kind of untouched by modernity, not because they don't have modernity, but because their culture is just not like plugged into the matrix yet.
Good point.
And sadly, I think we're going to have more of that, which kind of gets like, I was talking about, speaking with an Egyptian priest, and tell me if I'm wrong, and he was talking about missions to Cambodia and stuff. So that was the point of the conversation, which, hey, this is the Build the Wall stream. So guys, please, money, build wall. Links below. $800 away. $800 donations puts us over the top. So please, please, please be generous. So he was talking about Cambodian missions because he saw that as part of a larger strategy to evangelize also to Khmer in the Long Beach area, which is the largest Khmer population in America. Second largest would be Lowell. Then I think Philadelphia. Then, you start getting Providence, Rhode Island, and much smaller. Syracuse itself has a small community, but, it's there. Same with Utica. But that being said, it's with these missions and with Cambodia, it's something where Cambodia is a wide open mission field, but yet we have a clock ticking, because with the smartphone, we're going to be competing against secularism. So anyone in a poorer country, a country that's more foreign to like Western ideologies, is already going to have at least be more attuned to the spiritual. They understand what angels and demons are and things like that, and they're looking for spiritual answers to spiritual problems instead of pretending these things don't exist like we do in the West. We're materialists in the West. Yeah. And so the way I see it is rising tides lifts all boats when it comes to Cambodian mission field. So that, we were talking about, what we could do to really help out one another. Ultimately, probably I'd be offering more help. And I say that humbly because how much help could I really offer, right? But I know more of the lay of the land than that. They want to get started. So, I'd help them get started to evangelize Christianity. I'd show anyone there. I don't care who you are, Protestant, whatever, as long as you're not some crazy cult.
That's very Justinian of you.
Yeah, I'd show you the hood there. And like Justinian, the long game, everyone to become Eastern Orthodox. I really do feel, so this came up, so I'll bring it up. He said that, not going to lie, I'm here to see if the thing from the debate is discussed. So that's like, you're my favorite Eastern Orthodox person. I mean, I don't know. The point of the stream wasn't to talk about the debate. Like, literally, remember I texted you, it was like minutes before Agent uploaded a video, and I didn't know he was going to upload. And so this stream was going to happen for the reason the stream's happening. Raise money for the wall. Please donate. And honestly, I'm not that interested in commenting on the debate in as much as like commenting on Agent, because I just want to bring up any negativity. I think he did a great job. Let's talk positive, right? I thought he did great. And I think with anyone that's that smart, I think he's a smarter person than me. I could talk to someone and go, I think that person's smart. Don't make them right. Obviously both of us think we're wrong, but I think he's a smarter person than me. And so you're impressed. I'd say anyone that is comfortable in their own britches doesn't get jealous of someone else. Oh, they're smarter and they're sharper and, and all that stuff. So I was very impressed and very pleased with his performance. I thought he did very well. And I appreciated that. I think anyone apologetics long enough that doesn't have the ego the size of the moon could at least appreciate when they see someone else good at the craft. You know what I mean? Like, so that's how I kind of felt about that. As for anything else, I'll just leave that be. I'll just say, I've been nothing but honest. And, it's already been said. I'm sure Agent will make responses and stuff, and he's more than welcome to make responses on clips and whatnot. And all I say is I feel very comfortable because here's my thing, and maybe you say something. I feel I played the old man's strengths and he played the young man's strengths. And so depending on age is how you would walk away with it, So let me stop there. And I don't know if you have any comments that you feel comfortable talking about.
God bless you, Craig. You hit the nail on the head. I don't have anything much to add. I hope that if there's anything left to be straightened out, it'll be straightened out, and then we can just move forward.
Yeah, that's the main thing where this is ultimately between him and his spiritual father. And I think this is true for every apologist. And I'll say this, I think this is new grounds for like all spiritual fathers and all apologists. Like, how do we navigate this kind of online world and the ego that's involved, these Discord servers and whatnot? How much accountability is too much, where you can't get anything done and you're hamstrung? How much is too little? I think we're trailblazers this Subdeacon, right? Doing this starting in the 2010s.
First show was with you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But that makes us old timers.
Yeah.
So like I don't think people really fully understand the ramifications yet. But I do think, doing as long as I do, here's the real dangers that anyone as talented as AJ to run into, which would be the full spectrum dominance of really winning this game. The Discord server, ultimately having the Patreon, having the YouTube, whatever other things in social media, where it becomes so much about a personality and so much about constantly plugged into the matrix, where I think to do this right, you got to be plugging people out of the matrix, not into it further, right? So I'm here to call you out. Grab my hand. Come with me if you want to live, and come out of this matrix. This is a medium to ultimately bring people to read the fathers, to attend the services, to read the prayers, to read the scriptures, to fast. This is where we actually get edified, and not to every little controversy and every little thing. And this is why I feel, again, old man strengths, is that the more these things get teased out, the more sources that get translated. That's why, we were talking. During the debate, he wanted to read what he knew the translation to be. Go do it. More information is always good. Mm-hmm. And after the debate, I tried getting what I could find, and I ran things by you, and it got improved. And the translation from St. Proclus. And so, to me, the truth will always be vindicated with more information. So I'm all in favor of whoever it is, as long as they're dealing with integrity, more information. Yeah. And so I feel very confidently that what will come out during this is what was in my opening statement, which was certainly the strongest part of my own debate performance. Because again, old man strengths, it deals with what I could prepare and what I can anticipate comes out years down the line, because that comes with experience. That opening will age like fine wine. Yeah. And I do think some things at opening are very hard to deal with from the Oriental Orthodox side when you start unpeeling that onion. And we will hopefully be doing that pretty soon, the next couple weeks. I'll have something on St. Ambrose where it gets into a lot of detail. And all I could say is it looks good for me. That's the reason why I picked that source. And so this is interesting, because when people could deal with integrity and with honesty and appreciate the give and take, this is where we could get into those fine details. But the limitations of a debate format is you can't have a whole debate over just what is St. Ambrose meaning of the term twin nature, for example. But if you have a whole video on St. Ambrose Christology, you could get into that sort of detail. And so it's an interesting thing. I feel that the debate itself went well. It was very cordial between both sides. It got a little testy at a moment for both of us, but then it calmed down. Great Q&A. And so on both sides, if both sides watch the debate and are interested to look deeper into the sources afterwards, then it was a good debate. That's how I feel it went. And I do hope that maybe some of the youngsters on your side appreciate that aspect of it. And because I don't see anyone on my side getting all angry about it. Have you seen something on our side? Any sort of anger or animosity?
No.
So yeah, it's again, not agent himself. But I've noticed people reposting stuff, saying things about me that they seem to be pretty angry and worked up, and it's not a good look, because the side that gets worked up looks like they're compensating for losing. And I don't think agent performed in such a way where it would look like he lost. So there's no need for that. It doesn't look good.
Right. I don't know if it's it's an age thing, if it's a lack of maturity on their part, like it's not about winning and losing. Like I was talking to Elijah Yassi about this. It's like if me and him were to debate, does it mean that if I win or he wins, that Oriental Orthodoxy or Roman Catholicism is wrong? Are we the ultimate final representatives speaking authoritatively in ex cathedra? We're not. So I could lose, you could lose. Who cares? That's not an indication of truth. You know, we're not the best option for the conversation. We're just here.
I could watch a 50-part debate series between Craig and Agent. You know, to be honest though, I would need to start taking my ginkgo biloba and drinking lots of coffee. I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up with Agent. He's too young, too strong, too witty. But again, I don't mind taking a debate against an opponent I think is superior. Even if I think it's a conversation worth having, I'll do it. And I remember I had a meal with my family. I was sitting there pleased, drinking my wife's kombucha. My wife's got to making kombucha at Jordanville. Father Madari makes kombucha, and he finally gave us some of his SCOBY, and we take the Jordanville honey, and we make our own kombucha. It comes out great. I love it. Absolutely love the kombucha.
Yeah.
And so I'm chilling out having dinner is the point. Mm-hmm. And I said to my wife, you know, my kid's there, but, you know, I don't know how much he cares about this. He's going, I'm really pleased with that debate. I think it was a tie. I'm really happy about that. It's nice to be older and like not care whether you won or you lost. You're just happy it came out just fine. And so I know that's how I really felt about that. I don't know. That's really wasn't. I don't think we said anything bad there. So I guess we'll just leave that there. But all my comments have been like that. So it may be hearing the tone of my voice, people realize that's where I'm coming from. I don't know. We got some comments here. Love both of you. Craig's yours might be favorite Orthodox channel. It sounds like the same thing said twice. So thank you. I'm from Naples too, actually, with 10 minutes from where Sopranos was filmed. I thought it was filmed in Jersey.
In Paramus.
There you go. Yeah, it's in Jersey.
Yeah. I lived there for 3 months.
This Finland. There we go. Now we know the name is from Finland. Awesome. We have our exceptional examples, charitable level-headed discourse among differing beliefs, and God willing, that will be kept up. We have this. I don't even know. Can you set up and host a debate between me and William and Sam and the Eucharist and the Assumption of those are very two different topics. I just don't know where you're coming from there, Amanda. Those are two very different topics. But I don't think a very good conversation could be had. There'll be a lot of fireworks. I'll leave it at that. But I don't think a very constructive debate would be had. I think my debate with Agent was constructive. North Macedonia, remember, because that's the thing with the Greeks. But yes, they just call themselves Macedonia. I call people what they call themselves. Churches of Ukraine were packed when I was there. It depends where. I think, what's his name? He's got the Roman Catholic channel. He's been on my channel once or twice. He went to Ukraine. It depends. It's hit or miss with the Slavs. Sometimes they've got some empty churches themselves. So that being said, there was some stuff I wanted to talk about today as a random thing. You have a whole book on the Assyrian councils. I have these two books.
Oh yeah, I have to send you the PDF. I keep forgetting. I need to scan it.
You need. Please do so. For now, I'm reading these from D.P. Curtin, the Council of Cilicia. How do you pronounce it? Tesiphon, and the 4th century, the 5th century councils.
So I'm going to say this for the first time live.
What are you going to say live?
The Craig's channel.
Uh-oh.
I've said it privately to people, but this is my first time saying it out loud. The Synod of 424, my Assyrians of the East Brothers, I don't believe happened.
No.
Later thing that was added into the list, I don't believe it is historical.
So what are your textual reasons for that?
You can't find it anywhere. You can't. I couldn't. You can't find it in any list of synods afterwards. Any memory of it. Any. No one is citing it or saying, guys, the canon from this synod or nothing. So just much later in history, it pops up in the list of the synods with its acts. And even with its acts, it claims to be this kind of secret late night synod.
And so why do you think that they had this fake synod?
I think it's because of the autocephaly. So that's the synod where they cite that no patriarch outside of their own can be appealed to, and the synod of the Church of the East doesn't have the authority to depose the patriarch. So they kind of have this very, if the date is true of 424, which I don't think it is, it kind of gives a very papacy view to the Church of the East ecclesiology while they were still in communion for the next 60 years of church history. They're still
now. When do you think it actually was at least concocted that they would have this source?
So I've gone back and forth on this with a few people. I've gotten answers as late as the Uniate era, and I've gotten answers as early as the 6th century. So I don't know where I land exactly. I think it's I started off being a 6th century side, but then they would have appealed to it, right? So I think it ends up being more towards the end, because the language that's used there for the whole council, the point of the council, they deposed this patriarch, who, by the way, that's the guy who Ibas writes his letter to. It's the same guy. So they depose.
Good guy.
Yeah, they depose him, and then they beg him to come back. That's what the acts say. They're pleading with him to come back, and he's kind of being reluctant about it. And finally, he relents. And then but the conditions are this super high kind of untouchable position that no one can be appealed to, no council can depose him, only God can judge him, kind of thing. So you don't really see that in early church ecclesiology ever for anybody, and there's no precedent for it. And even within Church of the East tradition on its own, there's no memory or commemoration of the synod.
Well, and we have this comment that the patriarch leading the council 424 is a saint, by the way. I'm not sure which communion.
I mean, he was a patriarch for like 30 years. So even if the council doesn't have to be the reason why the Church of the East canonizes it. It's relevant.
And they usually call this, I think, the Synod of the Dosho. In this book, it's called the Council of Mar Kopta of the Arabs in 424. And so they answer Nicholas' question. That's this. I have a somewhat different perspective based on limited sources. So this is, again, a chill stream, not something, a hill I'm going to fight and die on, which is reading these councils consecutively, which you have the benefit of doing in this edition, the 5th century councils, the Church of the East, and then Council Seleucia Ctesiphon. Again, these are all from D.P. Curtin and from Dalcassian Publishing Company. Really awesome stuff on Amazon to get lots of rare sources of all over the place. God willing, we'll have Dr. Curtin on soon, but he does some really awesome stuff. And I mean, for $11, why wouldn't you want a book with all the minutes of all the synods of the Syrian Church of the East in the 5th century? I don't know. I think it's really awesome. So 5th century Council of the Church of the East, Curtin, look it up on Amazon.
Does it have the 484, 486 synods in there?
Yeah, it does.
Great.
410, 420, 424, 486, 497.
Beautiful.
And this is what kind of gets me to my point, is that generally speaking, the 5th and 6th century councils don't really cite one another, from what I could tell. And again, I'm speaking from memory here. So again, it's maybe we got to do like a actual series on this. Maybe when you send me the canon law thing, we'll do a episode on your channel.
410 is cited a lot. 424 is never cited.
My point is like between each other.
Okay.
These early, so like there's no, the 410s where they get their canon law from.
Yeah.
But even that's a little kind of iffy because their canon laws, different set of canons than Nicaea's. But anyway, it's definitely a lot of interesting things to be said about that. But they do seem to develop very consecutively, like it doesn't feel artificial read in order, which would imply to the historian reading it that at least it's plausible that it occurred when it occurred, because there's nothing in it that sounds very developed other than those ecclesiastical things, which we'll get into in a moment.
That's the whole synod.
It talks about all this stuff, but it's the way it addresses the patriarch, the way it addresses the king, when it talks about anything else during it, it's very similar. Another thing that's worth saying in all the synods, my impression, again, not an expert, just a guy that's interested in this stuff, it does seem that the Assyrian Church of the East was kind of concocted by the Persian state. And the schism would have been essentially concocted by the Persian state. They wanted a church under their own imperial control. And so what we see particularly in the synod is, what do you do in order to attain to that? And that was my impression, is that you definitely see this development of a very manipulated church. We talk about St. Justinian. That church seemed to have a lot more freedom than the Church of the East when you look at their documents and the sort of changes they make based upon what it looks like a unbelieving emperor wants, which makes sense, right? You have an unbelieving emperor that wants control over a church apparatus versus at least a Christian emperor that wants control over a church apparatus. It may explain some of the differences. It's kind of like, what do we do with Christianity in North Korea, right? It's an unbelieving dictatorial power. And then, there's churches there, but like, how do they operate under such constraints?
So there's a Chaldean Catholic priest, and as you know, the Chaldean Catholics are the Church of the East Uniates. And this Chaldean Catholic priest, I won't say his name, also does not believe the 424 Synod is historically authentic. Now, in the case of if you look at Church of the East in communion, when do they stop communing with the Roman Empire churches? They stopped communing in 484, precisely for the reason that you said. The Persians want to separate. 410 was an initiative by us, the church within the empire, to go to them and say, you guys need to administer yourselves for pragmatic reasons. So 410 gives them autocephaly, as far as we're concerned. 484, 486, these synods are now an attempt by the Persian Empire to separate communication between the Persian church and the Roman church.
All right. So it's all right. I just didn't know if that's where the point was going to, forgive me. So that being said, in the synod, I'll bring up at least a few things, leaving open. We see something in Daniel here. It's questioning authenticity. My argument is it doesn't seem really out of place from what I'm reading and the trajectory of the church. So whenever this thing was made, here are the highlights. And then, like I said, maybe we'd really get into the nitty gritty on a show on Nestorian Church of East Canon Law. We see that during this council, they call the patriarch the supreme chief of bishops. Let's get into some more of the honorifics. They'd say wives are subject to their husbands, and the husbands rule over their wives. Also, it's present for wives to love their husbands, to obey them, to listen to them, while it's only present for husbands to love their wives and not to obey them. Wherever husbands allowed themselves to obey their wives, they brought punishment upon themselves for not having observed the constitution's laws placed on them by God in nature. So it's making this very similar to post-schism Roman Catholicism, this argument, like philosophical argument, like, well, doesn't nature teach us it's great to have this like dictator that can decide everything? There's nothing patristic about this argument. It's an appeal really to nature, and isn't it most what's the one they like to say? Isn't it most fitting that this is how it would work, right? Like, not how we do theology, right? But we can see that way of thinking does exist in this council. Okay. And they call him Peter, and because the Church of the East, just so people know, comes from the Church of Antioch, which is a Petrine church. So they're then ascribing St. Peter to themselves. They say the gift of the priesthood was granted to all the apostles, but the unique principality, that is to say, spiritual fatherhood, was not given to all. There's also only one faithful steward who is the leader. They're saying that's of Peter and their patriarch. In the eastern region, in the patriarchal seat established in the city of Cilicia, the bishops cannot hold an assembly against their leader and their master because do not have the power to make themselves judges. So the interesting thing is this actually predates the Pseudo-Sammachian forgeries and saying no one could judge the patriarch other than God. The same thing happens during this synod. And again, like we see this, if I remember right, in this council in 544, that apparently the patriarchate was moved from Cilicia, which makes sense if your state is mostly artificial, if your church is mostly artificial apparatus imposed by the state, and the state finds it better to move the church to some other city for some military reason, who knows what, then the patriarchate changes with it. So a lot of these things seem to me to be practical considerations that they were addressing. But here again, we see that what occurred in the Pseudo-Sammachian forgeries isn't specific even to Rome. We see it here ascribed to Cilicia. Now, it talks about the following was defined, to quote it, by our ancient fathers of the West. Whenever they talk about fathers of the West, it means, Antioch and the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And those things essentially are that, let me get to it. Where is it? Darn it. This is where you're just pulling stuff out. The Western Fathers say that, this is quoting, defined by the Western Fathers, that it is not permitted for bishops to hold an assembly against their leader, nor to write charges or reproaches, but that if they have to complain and do not obtain satisfaction in the council in the presence of the patriarch, they must appeal to his colleagues, that means the other patriarchs, who will decide between him and them after having examined the matter. We define, that means in opposition to the West, that the Easterners will not be able to complain before the Western patriarchs of their patriarch. So why is this so important? There are 2 points here. Yeah. One, that stuff in Rise and Fall of the Papacy, where I take Paul Samosata and I take the Fifth Ecumenical Council and I take other episodes and say, the understood ecclesiology of the church is that patriarchs depose other patriarchs. Right? Like people below the patriarch can't depose a patriarch. A synod could depose him, but they need the assent of the other patriarchs for it to be efficacious. Mm-hmm. Not right. It sounds like, this is
like the synod of Antioch deposed Paul, and then Alexandria and Rome recognized that.
Recognized it, and there was representatives of the Ephesian patriarch there and the Jerusalem patriarch. So it's not like they were alone.
Yeah.
And so that being said, the interesting thing about this is that this couldn't be written during the Uniate era because they would not even be thinking in those terms at that point, right? They'd be thinking much more papal, modern Western terms of ecclesiology. So this, to me, is a very authentic observation of how people would think during this era. So even if it's not, if a word the 5th century, it would have to be similarly early.
Okay. So, but like as of right now, your view is that it is 424, not like 484, 500s.
I guess to me, 424 fits because it seems to fit the trajectory when I'm reading them in order. Mm-hmm. But again, this is not a critical study. I'm open to someone saying, no, it's really, 484, which is why its view is.
Well, Craig, imagine in 424, you have this synod that's saying that the patriarchs outside cannot be appealed to. Not like Athanasius did it, Chrysostom did it, and they're saying you can't do it. So wouldn't the rest of the churches be like, hey, what are you guys doing?
That presumes that they cared enough, in my opinion, and that they realistically, because at this point, I'd say the last ecumenical synod, which really was a true universal, in a sense, of international synod was Nicaea itself, right? They had a bishop from Bahrain, bishop from the Goths.
25, yeah.
Yeah, the others weren't. They were more concerned with issues of the actual Roman Empire and the Roman world. And there are certain places outside the Roman world, whether Georgia, Ethiopia, that would assent to these things decades down the line, mind you, right? So it wasn't instant because they didn't have a seat at the table right away.
Yeah.
And I think, in a sense, the fact that we have the Council of Nicaea not really fully accepted Church of the East until like 410, right? It speaks to, outside the Roman world, there's only so much they could get this assent without, again, them very voluntarily wanting to jump on board. And one could argue that the Church of the East really was on their way to schism after 424, because when did they have a serious seat at the table after that point? They didn't, right? Chalcedon was a huge synod. They don't have real representatives there. Everyone there is the Roman Empire.
Right.
So there already was an alienation, and I wouldn't blame, Christianity. It had to do with its Sassanids at that point, right? Not the Parthians. Am I getting them confused? Yeah. It would have been because the Persian state.
Yeah.
And so first thing I just want to point out, it's interesting because it shows you the understood ecclesiology is of patriarchal deposition needs other patriarchs. So this is not some sort of Craig Truglia polemic that no scholar believes or whatever. You read it, it's plainly stated as the stereotype of what the Western Church believes. This is like,
what is an indication, regardless of when we think it was, if it was authentic 424 or not. It's very indicative that it doesn't mention any type of way of in any way that there is something special about the See of Rome.
No, it doesn't mention at all.
There's no thought. So, like, the reason I bring that up is because my Catholic brothers, who I have amazing relations with, I love them, but I always tell them the universal faith that we've received should exist everywhere. So where in the Syriac tradition, I don't care if it's Persian Syriac, Roman Syriac, doesn't matter to me. Where in the Syriac tradition do you find the papal dogmas? And don't tell me the high Petrine stuff, because we agree with that.
Well, yeah, because let me piggyback on this.
Yeah.
Where they talk about this, and they say, through a messenger of peace, these things are made known to our Western fathers, meaning the Church of the Roman world, including Rome, Antioch, Jerusalem. By mutual agreement, they sent a zealous and worthy person for this mission who showed herself, interesting, to be faithful by rules she imposed. And then this is what they communicated back. The Catholicos Mar Dadisho, who's for us the Peter, head of our ecclesiastical assembly, may he resume government over us according to the precept of Christ to Peter, chief of the apostles. So when the Roman Catholic apologists say, we don't need to show Vatican I, we just need to show that a church assumed Peter to himself with exceptional prerogatives, and that they're exceptional because of this. Well, you have the same thing here for Seleucia.
Yeah.
Same exact language. I'll continue.
And even if you belong to that tradition, but you don't believe that synod is authentic because you're a uniate, whatever, Antioch is still Petrine. You still have to acknowledge that Petrine succession exists outside of just Rome.
And so it's interesting, like, this Petrine exceptionalism was made in purposeful defiance of what they understood to be the universal ecclesiology of the West, which means a refutation ultimately of Roman Catholic apologetics, that this high papal view has some sort of early provenance before like the 8th or 9th centuries. And so they say, by the word of the Trinity, no one is permitted to hold the synod against the Catholicos. For no reason can one think of or say that the Catholicos of the East could be judged by those below him. He himself must be judge over all those below him. His own judgment is reserved for Christ, who chose you, who placed him at head of his church. We consent to give our approval, absent our president, to everything that your authority and all the fathers who will come after the dosha will do. And so, like, again, if we had this for like any early pope, people would be all over it. You know what I mean? So the weird
I
thing is
always
this.
say that. Imagine they had that synod in 424. What would happen to us?
And so I could see them saying this. Well, it's a forgery, perhaps, because the reasons you say, and I'll just respond this way. If this is essentially a pseudo-Didychian forgery, like the pseudo-Syriac forgeries, they existed for the same reason, to insulate himself against eternal deposition, against deposition from the West, so that people could appeal outside of patriarchy, right? It served a very internal purpose. And it shows then this inference of Petrine prerogatives was always patriarchal within a local jurisdiction, right? They never pretended they had jurisdiction over the West. Just like the Pseudo-Syriac forgeries didn't pretend jurisdiction over the East. So you kind of have like this independent control group trying to accomplish the same thing, using the same sort of echoes of Petrine tradition and coming up with the same gross exaggeration. And it doesn't prove Vatican I.
Right.
You don't have a Nestorian Vatican I, or this is proto-Nestorian. You don't have an Assyrian Vatican I, and nor do you have Vatican I in the Pseudo-Syriac forgeries, as I detail in Rise and Fall of Papacy. So it's very interesting. The one other thing I'll bring up is they were Anglicans. They had married bishops. They wanted to marry. I mean, tell me about that. That's pretty cool.
You asking me about the Anglicans?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first time I read it. They had married bishops. They didn't, and then they said, no, there's too much sexual immorality. Let them marry.
You're saying the Church of the East?
Yeah, they had married bishops.
I thought you said the Anglicans. Sorry.
Well, they're like the Anglicans. They married bishops.
Yeah. They did. They did. Had, because remember, they're adopting all these Roman imperial canons late anyway. So like even when they get Nicaea in 325, they don't just get Nicaea. They get a lot of the 4th century synods, but they don't get 381, which is amazing. They get a lot of the other ones. And so then they have to kind of conform, but they don't conform all the way. Like, for example, till today, they can in their church, you can have a full deacon who's not married and then gets married after he's a full deacon.
That's weird.
Yeah, like the Armenians and the Tewahedos, because
that's weird.
Yeah, because they're all outside the borders, right? Those of us who are in the borders, Antioch, Alexandria, we can't do that.
Yeah, it's here. It's interesting because it could imply that what happened in Ethiopia and Armenia is actually not an original practice that wasn't regulated out of existence, but rather a mutation or aberration. Because here they had celibate bishops, and they regulated that out of existence.
Yeah.
Right. So it shows you it's just like the Anglicans. When we have actual textual evidence of, was this the original way it was? It's the bishops getting married came afterwards, not before. So very interesting thing.
That's true.
Now we got this from Salt Shack. The wall is stupid. Why is it stupid? Because they have ladders in Mexico. Trump just announced 0 border crossings. Enforcing law trumps ladders every time. Pun intended. I mean, we need a wall in Syriac. Again, $800 away. Please be generous. $800. This wall's done. Please, donors, now it's time to step up. And just so people know, any existing Patreons, if they make a donation, will be triple matched. Any new Patreons will have their first month donation triple matched. So this is your opportunity to really make a big difference. We're $800 away. But that being said, the wall has security purposes. In third world countries, people could break in and ruin things. And so you really do actually need these walls. The Russian donors spent considerable amount of money building this church and buying the property. This is a small amount to pay. It's $5,000 to just preserve that investment so we could keep evangelism alive in Syriacville in Cambodia.
Let me ask you, Craig. Are you familiar with the letter of Leo to Dioscorus in 444?
Yeah, about Eastern stuff, I remember, right? It was very condescending, if I remember.
Yes. In terms of what he's mandating it wasn't dogmatic. It was more like a administrative thing. What do you think about that ecclesiology or that relationship between the sees? What's your opinion on it?
My opinion is that both of them were trying to play for primacy in the church. I think we see this in Ephesus too, and I think we see this in Chalcedon.
From that letter, because we don't have a correspondence,
and because that letter reflects how Leo's posturing, likely, right, especially in light of Ephesus 2, likely in response to how Dioscorus himself was posturing, would be my guess.
Okay. So, and you're thinking that even though we don't have a letter from Dioscorus, that has to be kind of the context?
Because that's the context in Ephesus 2, and that's the context in Chalcedon. So, you know, and we don't have, like, we have earlier popes saying very muscular things to people within their own jurisdiction. They are much more circumspect when writing to other patriarchs, but Leo's letter to Dioscorus is much more jarring in that respect and making demands of him. And again, nothing where this pertains to direct jurisdiction and things that matter in the apologetics world, but it's very jarring from a historical perspective because you never see this between patriarchs.
That's what I mean.
And especially considering, you know, Rome versus Alexandria at that point, like Rome was, you know,
random.
It's well, not, I wouldn't say even random. Rome is becoming a nobody city, and Alexandria is the big shot.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very bizarre, but it makes sense if you realize kind of what you do when you're losing authority is to double down. And I think that's what Rome was doing. In my opinion, on a legitimate authority, because they had canonical and traditional precedents in the church, and they still would if they were in communion. You know,
you're saying
how
Rome?
I feel about that. I'm sorry.
You're saying Rome?
Rome itself, yes. So, you know, remember Canon 3 Constantinople 1 says that they're the first see, essentially, right?
So then how would that look? So in the case of Leo's reaching out to Dioscorus like that, is that within Rome's authority to do so?
I would have to remember the details exactly over
He was
Easter.
telling him to ordain when and when not to ordain priests, like ordain them on this day, not that day.
I don't remember that detail, but I do know Leo did that in other things as well. There was a deacon who was made a priest of some graveyard in Constantinople, and he actually appealed directly to Leo. And Anatolius of Constantinople actually had to then like essentially withdraw the consecration so he could be a deacon, because the idea is so he could become a bishop somewhere else. Like back then, the church took more serious that you can't translate people. They thought,
wouldn't that imply?
So again, this shows it's not even specific to Dioscorus that Leo did kind of mess. He would make himself available to meddle in these things.
But that doesn't imply universal jurisdiction.
No, because it's a suggestion. They'd have to listen to him. You know, you know what I mean? And I do think that there was, because of Sardica, which Rome kept citing, there wasn't an agreed upon interpretation of Sardica. The East didn't even fully accept Sardica's canon until Trullo. So first you have the issue that whether Sardica is even really considered canonical. Was Sardica made a canon by Canon 1 of Chalcedon? Right? The fact that I personally feel yes, because we in Trullo it's named, and generally it's naming the Chalcedonian canons in that second canon of Trullo. But it's debated, and certainly the interpretation was debated, and where the Eastern Church eventually landed was on a intra-patriarchal interpretation of Sardica.
Yeah.
But Rome definitely had a larger view of Sardica, which was that Rome could take appeals of the whole church, and that those appeals would have consequence with the assent of the whole church, not of just the Roman church. And so you kind of get something that is maybe inconvenient for surface level apologetics on both sides, right? You have a more overarching claim made by Rome and like the Sardican canon, but it's not the Vatican I claim. And ultimately it's not, and to make it more inconvenient, it's not the claim ultimately that the Eighth Ecumenical Council accepts as a proper interpretation of Sardica and all the subsequent canonists interpret it. I take a more pro-Roman approach even than Roman Catholic historians like Federico Montanaro that just don't think Sardica was interpreted that way. Out of all humility and respect, I just don't think that's defensible reading what Leo, Gelasius, and others interpret Sardica. But what we can't do is get apologetics brain and think, oh, well, you know, what they were saying was Vatican I, right? There's a much more context to this.
So Agan is coming out with a papacy video, and you're going to love what he's going to say about Sardica.
Well, you know, I'll wait and see. I'll just say that these things require a lot of care and interpretation. Mm-hmm. And someone as smart as Agan, if he sticks with this, and actually, I don't know what he studies, but if he ends up pursuing theology or history, you know, a professional discipline in this, you know, that relates to apologetics in some way, the care into making some of these historical critiques will increase, I think, in time. Because there's a difference between winning in apologetics and actually making a compelling historical claim.
Right.
And so that's something, again, like, you know, now published books and academic articles, you start getting much more, maybe not careful with every statement you ever make, but at least much more guarded with what you could assert with confidence and what you could assert with varying degrees. But he's more than welcome to reach out to me if he wants to run into my historical research on this. But it's, you know, I just be curious as to, one, what he's going to come out with, and two, you got to bring the goods, and it needs a lot of context. You can't just find a few interesting quotes and go, here you go. Like guys like, again, with St. Leo the Great, there's a lot of context behind what they're saying and what they're doing, and how again, previous popes and subsequent popes would have understood the same things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I have there. We have this. I visited my first Oriental Orthodox church today, a Malankara Orthodox church, and it was great, more sitting and standing than the Greek Orthodox, rather than Rocorn OCA. I'm more of a stander. I don't like the sitting. I don't like passing.
I don't believe we should have pews even.
You know, it's but that being said, did you know, when I knew I had to become Orthodox, I didn't know much about Oriental Orthodoxy. My closest Orthodox church was a Malankara church. Mm-hmm. And so I was considering going to that church. Again, this was when I was a Protestant, didn't know too much about it. I was thinking, oh, the food's going to be good because they're Indian. And but that being said, when I found out they didn't accept Chalcedon, like, oh, there's that whole other thing, Orthodoxy, and they kind of nipped that in the bud. But that was based upon much less reflection than now, all those years ago. So just a little story there. We have on that visit to the Malankara, passing of peace was unique. They asked me to introduce myself to everyone after the liturgy was fully over. The priest offered it and wanted to meet me for lunch. And I think a lot of that's also cultural. Like a lot of people, I don't know if Spartan's like just a white dude or like black dude, you know, like an American, right? Not like Arab or whatever, yeah. Greek. But a lot of cultures, they're hospitable as a matter of like obligation. And so it's kind of hard because you have to kind of determine, do they actually want to be hospitable right now? Am I imposing by accepting the hospitality? Am I supposed to say no? I think it's always good in the beginning just to accept the hospitality.
For Arabs?
Well, I've heard Palestinians particularly.
You know how you can tell? You know how you can tell, Craig?
Tell me.
If it's traditional Arabs, the way you can tell if it's imposed or they intend to be hospitable or they have to be is if there's salt in the food or not. If there's no salt in the food, that means you're imposing. That's pretty screwed up. It's kind of like, you know, when your wife doesn't want to cook for you, she starts cooking worse on purpose. Yeah, that's the indicator. You taste the food, there's no salt, you get up and you leave. It's
the Italian way is actually kind of easy. If they ask you 3 times, they mean it. You know, oh, you know, come in enough to wear your shoes. No, it's okay, I'll take them. No, you don't.
Ours is twice.
The Italians 3 times. Said 3 times, and all right. They're saying to drink 3 times, and you know, it's no. He really means it, and it's an insult not to accept it. You know, that's what I
got it.
We have this. Subdeacon Daniel Kakish Craig discuss Nestorian canons to take audience questions. We're gonna get a lot on those, and like I said, we have to probably do a whole show where we're gonna get into more actual details because again, we're just chatting about it here. We're not giving a serious history. I'm ignorant of ancient Church of the East, Assyrian Church of the East history. Did their patriarch eventually get a kind of papal position of power? I'm going to say no, from what I could tell. It seems like the claim was made, and that it was definitely much more authoritative. But at the end of the day, it was they kept making ecclesiastical changes based upon what the government wanted. It's what I infer. I don't know if you have more to add about that.
I think that if we so I don't know if you guys saw the first episode we did, Craig and I, on Syriac Orthodox canons.
You know, that's one of my all-time favorite YouTube shows.
Me too.
In most underrated. Like, why do people understand the gold in the nitty-gritty and canons like that?
Yeah, it's awesome. And so the Church of the East one, the book is a lot bigger. And we're gonna do an episode, me and Craig, on that one. We're gonna cover those in detail. Hopefully for that one, maybe we can find a Church of the East guy to come on with us.
Yeah, you know, this is like, right, you have two white dudes talk about the history of Ethiopia or something like that. You need someone who's Assyrian.
I have a guy. At
least you're half Assyrian, so you could pull the ethnic card, but you're not that.
Yeah.
You're not part of that church, so
right.
you got a guy though. You're Italian. Yeah. I got a guy. We have. Do you think Bobowai is a saint? I think you said he was for them, right? For you guys, right?
Yeah, he's on our calendar. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. The Severus said 431, 449. Did Severus treat them as? What is this talking about? I don't know. It sounds like
I think he means as 449 counted as an ecumenical council in the same way.
I think it depends on the writer. It does seem like that Timothy the Cat, when he was listing the councils, he listed 449 among them.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I don't see what consistent reason you wouldn't list 449 as a council if you are Oriental Orthodox, other than just the tradition never did. Perhaps because the Henoticon didn't, and so it's just kind of this continuation of that. But let's talk about that. That's a fun topic.
Yeah.
A debate that should be had is whether the ecclesiology of the Oriental Orthodox is deficient in some way. And and of course you can say, no, it's not. But let me pose this, and maybe we could banter back and forth a tiny bit and then drop it, because the point is not to really debate it. It appears to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that the criteria for an ecumenical council for the Oriental Orthodox is strictly whether it was Orthodox. It's not its acceptance synodically or popularly. It's not that, right, Nicaea has this, for example. It's not you reject the council could have these things, but it's not the decisive criterion.
I think these are all ingredients. I think it, like, which one it is,
because it sounds very Roman Catholic, right? Like, I'd pose to you, how would you do one today?
Yeah,
and know it's ecumenical.
Okay, so Nicaea and Ephesus 431. They defined dogma. Constantinople also 381, but the reason I mention is because that kind of is equated later. But the first three synods, they define dogma. 449 just repeats what 431 does. So 449 says, here's the creed of 325. Here are the 12 anathemas of 431. That's it. It doesn't come out with anything new. So yes, we can't reject 449. It's kind of like how the I don't know if you guys hold to Lateran also, or if that's just the Western thing.
No, I mean 649 is considered part of the patristic tradition, but it's not part of the conciliar tradition.
So for the Latins, they've told me we can't reject 649. I think there are a couple more after the 7 that the Eastern Orthodox have to hold, even if they're not counted in the 7. It's the same for us. So in Theodosius of Alexandria's letter to Severus in 536, he mentions Nicaea, Constantinople, Ephesus, and the Henoticon. That's what he mentions. Mm-hmm. So that early on, clearly we're not counting it as equal within that tier. Can you, as Oriental Orthodox, say you disagree with 449? You can't, because it's commemorated on the calendar.
Oh, yeah, see, it's interesting. If it's commemorated, that would seem to me an ecumenical council.
Yeah.
It does teach dogmas. It does teach Christology, and it did do ecclesiastical work that they considered valid with its depositions and stuff. I would say, laughably not so, but it's. But that being said, it's something where I do think the ecumenicity criteria of Nicaea II is the most defensible, because everything else is ad hoc in a sense. Like at least with Nicaea II, you have a criteria that's repeatable, a criterion that's repeatable, and it explains why the ecumenical councils stop, because you can't meet the criterion anymore. You could have binding councils, but you're just not going to have strictly ecumenical councils. They don't attain to the same name, and this will be the at the canon law conference that's going to be in Boston in October. This will be the topic I'm discussing, is particularly on the ecumenicity of councils. And so I think that the idea of a council being orthodox, being the criterion, being a criterion, is not wrong. But if that's your sole decisive criterion, it's circular, right? It doesn't work. And I know that's popular in some Eastern Orthodox circles, even, because it's a way of combating heresy. And that's actually why that criterion was ever even invented by St. Maximus. And I'm sure in Oriental Orthodox circles it exists as well. So it's not that it's wrong. Of course it must be Orthodox. But there is a much more common understanding in all the patristics that there has to be consensus, there has to be assent, there has to be synods on board. We even see this, ironically, in that Nestorian source or the Assyrian source, right? That source flat out in giving away, right, all the prerogatives of their synod and rejecting the prerogatives of the rest of the church require their own assent, and they said so.
Yeah.
And so you even see them acknowledging this is how the rest of the church understood how things work. And in order to change it, they needed to set their own synod anyway. So it does speak to that there is this larger thing on consensus-based ecclesiology that everyone acknowledges, even when they step away from it, is there.
So
and so I think I'll say, and I'll let you respond, and then maybe I'll drop it. Rome has distanced themselves from this because they've developed away from this. And it appears to me, and maybe correct me, that the Oriental Orthodox, because they were what began as a minority group movement where they were, has distanced themselves away from this for that same reason, because their development, they couldn't develop the way they did if they would have accepted that, no, there's these controls that don't let us do this. They had to kind of retool their ecclesiology around where they were developing. So that's my comments, and I'm sure there's disagreement. Let me give you an opportunity to respond.
Pope Tawadros, the current Pope of Alexandria, he invited for next year's, the Indians and the Abyssinians to come to a synod in Alexandria with the Syriacs and the Armenians, because there's a lot of issues to hammer out between some of the churches, between each other. So this could end up being an ecumenical council. We don't know until it happens, right?
Yeah, this is one of those things where, when the church is very regionalized because of, like, again, persecution and stuff. And when the bishops and the theologians aren't dealing with the kind of apologetic and polemical questions of these ecclesiology because of Roman Catholics, you might have a council and not really be worried, let's make this ecumenical or not. You're just worried about dealing with your own stuff.
Exactly.
But now there's this awareness that it seems like we're not doing everything we need to do. I will say this, though. I think a lot of people thinking the Eastern Orthodox Church isn't acting in this universal way is very recent. Because studying the church into the 1800s, you see the Orthodox Church having universal councils, right? You know, you have up into the 1500s, you have these universal councils after the schism with the Roman Catholic Church. You have these universal councils having commemoration, right? We have something called the Synodicon, which is done during the Sunday Orthodoxy, and the decrees of these councils are declared in the church, and the anathema is repeated in the church. And so you have the decrees of these councils actually having a date of liturgical commemoration. And so it's kind of like this new thing. And I think it starts degenerating from what I could tell. I don't have enough resources in English to really know for sure. But it does seem after the fall of Constantinople, that starts becoming much more spotty. It doesn't disappear because, again, the Ottomans try having an ethnarch out of the Constantinopolitan Patriarch, and they try to centralize things that way. But that being said, you have the Orthodox Church having universal synods like Constantinople in 1848 and stuff like that. Like, they're still occurring. And then all of a sudden, you know, in the 1900s with the calendar change and stuff, there's sort of like confusion. Can we still really do this anymore? And then Moscow tried having a ecumenical synod in 1948. And, you know, it's almost like they're thinking they're trying to do something new. And it's like, but you were doing this 100 years ago. So it's like almost in modernity where it kind of got forgotten. And of course, we're dealing with this topic in English in modernity. And so I wouldn't be surprised with the issue in Ukraine that this kind of evolves into a Crete 2016, which will stick, which I will have a show in Crete 2016, but like a Crete 2016 that pretty much everyone's on board with, that people will recognize, no, this really is the real deal. And, but when right before, it's so one of those things like until it happens, it almost sounds like, whoa, we Roman Catholics did it. Why didn't everyone else? And I would venture to guess with more understanding, more research in the Oriental Orthodox history, we might see more cooperation than people give credit right now. It's just there's not enough information out there. Because in the few years I've been doing this very seriously, you start realizing that among the people that are writing dogmatics and the canon lawyers in Eastern Orthodoxy, canon lawyers kind of a false term. They don't really, people understand the canons. They're like bishops generally. They understand the canons, they're not canon lawyers per se. Among the canonists, there seems to be this understanding of which councils are universal, and it's not like what people popularly say in apologetics. The fact that people will say like, oh, Jerusalem 1672, not everyone accepts this. It's like, it's such a absurdly ignorant statement to anyone that understands history, what the dogmatists write, what the canonists write.
What's the problem that people have with 2016?
Crete 2016?
Yeah.
The main thing is not everyone was on board. Russia got a little shafted for not showing up, and you can't shaft half the Orthodox world. You know, it's right. It's things don't work out too well.
Okay.
Antioch wasn't on board ultimately.
Were there theological issues from different sees?
There's actually a lot of valuable things in that council, which is why I'm going to have a whole show on it. I just haven't recorded it yet. It's all researched, and in fact, the PowerPoint's all done. I just haven't recorded it. There's a lot of valuable things in that council, important things about, and I'd say moral things about our responsibility as citizens, our responsibility to the environment, our responsibility in marriage. Like all these marriage questions are decided in this council. There's a very valuable things in this council. There's also some stuff that proves to be like sounded better in 2016 than even now 9 years later. It's like the taking in of endless refugees. That's obviously not working out. It's not good for Syria. It's not good for European society. It's not good for anyone, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we don't want humanitarian disaster, right? That's right. But the answer isn't to pretty much make governments fail in the Middle East and then force their people to become the future taxpayers in Western European countries and to a lesser extent, Eastern European countries. That's not the solution. It's not moral. And I don't see really dogmatically where the church even weighs in on this, really. So that's something I'd get in more detail. That being said, we got Dr. Mysterio, Creed 2016's heretical council, and there are priests and bishops did not accept it. Again, which is true. That's why it's not accepted. It was never had consensus in the Orthodox Church. We would have problems, some statements. The document Relations, the Orthodox Church, other Christian churches has some real problems in it about the ecumenical movement. And ultimately, it's not issued in the decree. And so it's questionable how much even what's enforced within that document. That's the other thing. I left it out. It's the other thing that's problematic within that council. But we'll talk about that in more detail. We have this concerning that the formal union in the East was maintained through the Humorous. When would the liturgical difference we see between Antioch and Alexandria have started? What's your answer, Subdeacon?
Yeah, so the liturgical differences didn't begin with the parallel lines in 518 and 536, respectively. That's not when it started. At least the major ones. Major ritual differences where the rite of, say, Chalcedonian Antioch, Chalcedonian Alexandria, the rite shifts. It's no longer the rite of those sees. It becomes the Byzantine rite. That happens much later, near the end of the first millennium. Most people give the date to. And the native languages are no longer used in the rites there. So this is when the differences in the rites happen, because early on, when in 518, 536, people don't know this. In 518, it was the Chalcedonian side that had ethnic Syriac patriarchs. The non-Chalcedonians had the Greeks. Peter the Fuller was a Greek. Severus was a Greek. Ephraim of Amid and Abraham and those guys, they were Syriac. So the schism was not ethnic, because you had ethnicity, different people from different ethnicities on both sides of the schism. So you were having, Antioch was bi-ritual, at least bi-ritual, maybe more. And the liturgy of Antioch was being celebrated in Greek in Antioch and in Syriac in the rural areas and Mesopotamia. And it depended on where you lived and who your bishop was, of whether you were on which side of the schism. This became more conformed over time. After Severus, you have exclusively Syriac patriarchs in Antioch. And eventually for the Chalcedonians, they have exclusively Greek, or I should say Greek praying, Arabic praying. The Syriac rite eventually falls out on the Chalcedonian side. The Greek rite falls out for the Syriac side. But the Syriac, the non-Chalcedonian side keeps the Antiochian rite, whereas the Chalcedonian side adopts Constantinople.
I just said that I do feel that I used the term ethnic schism during the debate recently with Agen, and you were there. Just can't speak that much. The better word would have been regionalized. These were regionalized movements. Secondarily, proto-nationalists, because that would be somewhat anachronistic to say nationalists. And third, would be ethnic, to the extent that do we have people that would later be called the bourgeoisie, the people that want to become the next hegemons that are Greek-speaking and hooked up to the Greek world? Yes. That's very common in any movements that are revolutionary and that seek to subvert people that are presently ruling and in power. It's the people in the bourgeoisie that become the new ruling class, and they use the proletariat, to speak with this Marxist lens of history, in order to accomplish such ends. But who are the proletariat, if we're going to use that group? It was, again, ethnic Copts, ethnic Syrians. And so you do have a schism that will later be blatantly like along these ethnic lines, where you could pick at, they speak this language, that language, they have this background, that background. And there's a reason why, because they were the real force and inertia behind these regionalized movements, because you couldn't get enough support without going by getting the support of those people. This is a larger topic than I could obviously talk about right now, but that's what I was referring to. And I apologize if I didn't use the word regionalized.
No, I was asking for clarification. I didn't know what you meant by it.
Yeah. So anyway, we got a couple questions here, and then we're going to call it a day because it's getting late. Do Oriental Orthodox say God was tempted or Jesus was tempted?
Oh, we wouldn't have a problem saying either one. I don't. Would you?
Well, this St. James says God can't be tempted.
Yeah, I know.
I guess it's one of those things. This is where, again, the Chalcedonian distinctions are useful. God as a person was tempted, right? Yeah. Jesus Christ is a person. That person was tempted, yes. But what nature did that temptation apply to? The Chalcedonian can very much say, divine nature cannot be tempted. You know, it's a condescension to human language to say to this, because you can even see things in the Old Testament, right? About that. Like when Christ says, do not bring the Lord God to the test. Could you test the divine nature? You know what I mean? It's like some of these things are condescensions to human language and human concepts. But that being said, but we could say, but the human nature was tempted according voluntary to blameless passions. And I will say this is where reading Severus is very useful, because Severus is very much aware that Christ was tempted according to the voluntary assumption of blameless passions. It doesn't, for all practical intents and purposes, work out very differently. But you can't just flat out say the human nature was what tempted, not the divine nature, because you don't have that distinction. And so we do as Chalcedonians, so we could maybe say it easier.
We would say the concrete, the single concrete reality of God the Word was tempted according to the flesh.
There you go. And so we have that. This is where someone smarter than me ultimately has to really unpack the conceptual differences, if any, I think they are, between Severian Christology and I'll just call it Chalcedonian or pre-Chalcedonian Christology. Because there seems to be, and this is something I brought up during that debate, that when we see pre-Severian writers that the non-Chalcedonians accept, using differentiating between the Son of God and the Son of Man, and that sort of that Nestorianizing language theoretically.
Yeah. If
it's a writer that's accepted or a saint that's accepted, they're fine with it. So it seems to be that there's some sort of conceptual distinction that starts with at least Severus, that where you can't speak in those terms without it being mishandled in some way. And I'm not smart enough to really be able to grapple with that, which is why I deal with Chalcedon before.
So in the Psalms we pray every day, he neither slumbers nor sleeps, but God slept for my sake, right? When he became man. And according to the flesh, he slept. So it's the same concept. He was born, he died. I mean, we don't have a problem saying all the other things.
Yeah, this is where you'd have to differentiate. Yes, the person of Christ died, but divine essence cannot die.
Of course.
Right. And so there's my personal view, ignorant view, is that the Christological terminology and Trinitarian terminology has had development, but in terminology, not the concepts. But I do think the terminology improves over time. I think that particular hypostasis doctrine is an improvement in differentiating the persons of the Trinity compared to some of the terminology before. Though we do see it in St. Dionysius and the Areopagite, we do see it in St. Hippolytus. So it's not like totally unprecedented, but for it to become like the main way we talk about the differences in the divine persons from the Cappadocians, I see as an improvement. As a Chalcedonian Christian, I see the distinctions from Chalcedon as an improvement. It simplifies things. It makes things easy. It makes when we talk about the operations of God, the wills of God, and I mean not the divine nature, but we're talking about Christ, where the divine will could do this, the human will could do that. We get to speak about it more simply, while without that distinction, the Oriental Orthodox cannot. The question then becomes, does this create some sort of conceptual problem on either side? And I won't solve that right now. I don't think so, of course, and you think yes, it does. So, but that would be the real question. Is this distinction then create a conceptual problem? And well, because if it doesn't, if the end of the day we're conceptually the same, then it seems to me that the real problem would be in Chalcedon not being accepted for it being conceptually
right.
That'd be the problem.
Well, if Craig is saying to me, he was tempted according to his humanity or according to his human nature, not according to his divinity or his divine nature, we can have a conversation, and we're going to have way more in common than maybe we realize, and we'd be pleasantly surprised. But if Craig is saying to me, it was his human nature that was tempted, not his divine nature, that's further away. Because now
that sounded like the same thing twice to me. I'm sorry.
Because that's where we would say the distinction isn't clear. So when you're saying the human nature is tempted versus he was tempted according to his human nature, the he is the same he. So there's not two objects now.
Well, this is a thing where, like, that Cyril with allegedly, with the idea of according, but we see in, let's say, St. Ambrose just using the Latin word for in, which is also the word in, and using the word assumption, assuming human nature, and having this assumptionist bent of what it means for the human nature and how it operates. I'd argue that pre-Chalcedonian Christology is fine with the distinction that Chalcedon makes, and that's the thing. And so, according to versus in it, as long as we're not talking about two different people in adoptionism, which is why in the debate I made very clear, no, Nestorius really was adoptionist. This is not me misquoting Nestorius. You could read this in his homilies against the Theotokos.
So you believe, Craig? Sorry, you believe that with us, it's a conceptual problem, and
actually, I'm more guarded.
Okay.
My ignorant guess is that the Oriental Orthodox have to have their Christology conceptually wrong because our canons of Trullo anathematize Severus.
Okay.
And Dioscorus.
Got it.
The anathematization of Dioscorus as a heretic, for me, it is fine. Again, remember Chalcedonian. I'm not trying to hate on anyone. Right? This is where, like, we have to let the person say something disagreeable so you can understand their worldview.
Of course.
And then I'll have more funny things to say. That because Dioscorus, in my view, vindicated Eutyches.
Okay.
I don't think he was privately Eutychian. That's never my argument.
Yeah.
But I could see, you could anathematize someone for vindicating Eutyches.
Got it.
So, like, I got no problem with that. Severus is more difficult.
Yeah. Because
Severus is a more conscientious thinker. And so for Severus to be anathematized, his theology has to be wrong. Right? Maybe it's as simple as the 536 Council anathematizing him. The 536 Council, right? And traditionally, the 536 Council is seen as kind of like the preliminary to the Fifth Ecumenical Council.
Right.
And so, but you don't have you don't have Severus like vindicating the out-and-out heretic like Eutyches. So even then, it would seem to me for Severus to be anathematized, his theology must be wrong. So that's like me just being very simplistic.
Right.
Me being a little less simplistic, but potentially just as ignorant. I'm not convinced in as much as I don't understand how Oriental Orthodoxy is conceptually wrong in Christology. That being the case, that would mean the problem with Oriental Orthodoxy isn't their Christology, it's their obstinance in accepting Chalcedon and making that an impediment to union.
Yeah, this is what
because if I view Chalcedon as conceptually the same as Cyril, and potentially, again, like I'm going to guess it's not the case, but in my own understanding, because I'm not a strong enough theological thinker, I didn't read anything in Severus which would be that conceptually wrong, or I haven't just worked it out to see where it's conceptually wrong.
Got it.
If as a mental experiment, we just say Severus conceptually is the same as Chalcedon, then I wouldn't have an issue. I just prefer the Chalcedonian distinctions. And if they're conceptually the same, then the impediment to union is the group of people that created parallel bishoprics that won't accept the conceptually identical council. So it would mean I would have to be wrong for your side to be justified. You would have to be conceptually different. So you almost have to kind of hope that the ignorant me just accepting the anathemas from my side, that those anathemas reveal a theological defect, particularly in Severus.
Yeah.
Because unless there's a difference there, then your side would be obstinate in that event.
Right. So this is the opinion that I've always thought that you've had about us. Do you have the same opinion about the Assyrian Church of the East?
That's a good question. I'm going to say I don't think they have hammered out the Christology sufficiently. We spoke about this in the Syrian canon. Remember the Syrian canon episode?
Yeah.
We did on your channel. If you read the canonical Christology of the Syrian Church, right? I say canonical because there's a canon on it. It's not based on your sacred tradition, just your canon. There's nothing wrong in the canon. There's nothing that a Chalcedonian wouldn't accept about what that canon states.
Yeah.
And so why with the Assyrian Church of the East, I did read one of their Christological canons, and it didn't seem that overtly Nestorian. But I'm aware of a council in the 13th century which really tries to defend Nestorius.
As a person?
At least the theology that they ascribe to him, if I remember right.
Okay.
It's been like 7 years since I looked at this, so forget it. And so what I've already seen within 2 centuries in the Nestorian Church of them going back and forth between who's even the patriarch, I don't know if they're consistent enough where I say the Church of the East is conceptually the same. We could hope so. I know in our Nicaea 2025 episode, we essentially were, but I'm not sure if that's historically true.
Gotcha.
And that's why my bet would be that there must be some crucial conceptual difference starting in Severus himself, because I don't see it before him, and Severus is too careful and intelligent a theological thinker, I feel, to have not systematized something that would really set them apart during that time.
East, you're saying?
No, Severus from the Chalcedonians.
Yeah, from us. Severus of Antioch.
Yes.
Okay.
Your Severus from my Chalcedonians.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So it's I would love nothing more to be wrong about that. Come to some epiphany as to why else Severus, because here's why. This sounds awful. This is like, you've seen that meme with the Slavic guy with the terrible deal he gives you, so this might be a terrible deal, but this is a deal I'd be very happy with. It would be the Oriental Orthodox accept Chalcedon and our subsequent councils, and they have to accept the anathema of only 2 men, Dioscorus and Severus, and then it's done. Because then technically, the rest of your saints could be locally venerated. We might have to work out other wrinkles, but you could substantially actually work that out. But I give too much credit to you and to the Copts that you would sell Severus and Dioscorus down the river.
I would rather die personally.
You know what I mean, right? But I'd rather see these condemned people sold down the river because they're condemned by me. So it doesn't mean much to me. Right. And if they are wrong, then why not? So, but that's the main impediment. I think in your 1991, here's the weird thing. If 1991 was correct, then that does mean Chalcedon's right. And then that means the only thing that would have separated it was just accepting Chalcedon and the subsequent councils and the anathema of those 2 men.
John the 10th, the Chalcedonian Patriarch of Antioch, is proposing this, saying, just accept Chalcedon. He's not even asking for the anathemas.
Well, I think you would need to, but that's a step in the right direction.
Right. And we have our own proposal. But I think in your heart, Craig, I think you're a Severus fan.
Oh, I like Severus. He's cool.
Yeah,
He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
There you go. It's I am a Severus fan, and this is one of those where maybe not right now in my life, time wise. There's so much things I have to research, but a really conscientious study of Severus Christology, if I were able to pay more attention to that, at least then, if I found what I thought was wrong and you thought was right, we'd be able to make a more clear delineation. Because I think the best people on this question are too rabid, I feel, where there's limitations to the extent of how profitable conversation can be. Absolutely. Because the temperature gets too hot.
Yeah.
It's fine to disagree. It's important to disagree, but it can't get into the apologetics of personal destruction, right? Because then you can't have a real conversation anymore. And then the progress stops to a large extent. The progress where the other side can understand where there may be even wrong, right? Because they're going to stop listening to you because they're too busy. Oh, I heard this guy's a scumbag because he said it. Because that becomes more important than the actual theological dispute.
Exactly.
So,
do you have an opinion on Theodore?
Theodore who?
Mopsuestia?
What about him?
Do you have an opinion?
Oh, he's a heretic.
Okay.
Well, I mean, he's condemned. So, he's a heretic. Yeah. We have a few more 30 seconds or less. Do the Oriental Orthodox and Eastern Orthodox view theosis differently or the same? I would guess that it's substantially the same conceptually. That'd be my guess.
I would guess that too.
Some people go, oh, well, there was some 1950s liberal Coptic patriarch that said this or that. But again, we have some we have Kyrilocaris, so we got some interesting things too from individual patriarchs. I would want to ask both of you, Craig and Subdeacon, what is your advice for someone who wants the true church but maybe isn't intellectually gifted enough to understand it? Is to step back and pray and to fast and and try to pray prayers that predate probably the schisms between both, and just kind of let God fill the gaps. We got to give ourselves some grace, I think. That's how I feel. God didn't come to save history scholars. I'm grateful that whatever, Subdeacon who teaches history, or at least you still teach history at the community college?
No, just at the
anymore.
Church.
As a former teacher, and again, he teaches in the church. As myself being an apologist, an author, and a historian, grateful it helps people, but that God didn't come. This is one means. The main thing is you got to do the spiritual life and give yourself some grace and commend yourself to the grace of God ultimately.
Absolutely.
We have how should someone who is simple-minded, I guess it's kind of the same regarding Christology. That's tougher. I feel that might be a better agent question if in maybe a calmer moment and say, here's the best on their side, best on our side. Because I don't have the best answer to that personally. I'd say with Christology, again, maybe pre-schism saints, best way to go.
Yeah, I would go the same way. Yeah.
You're right. Read Cyril, read Ambrose. Because supposedly they're on board with one another, right? And then ask yourself who comes closer to representing these men would be the better thing. Let me have one more topic before we go. Apparition in Egypt, because he texted me about it. Apparently, my comments on the Zeitzun, or however you pronounce it,
Zeitzun.
Scandalized people.
Yeah. You know why? You know why, Craig?
Why?
Because the OO love you. If it was someone else from the EO side, they wouldn't. We expect that. But Craig,
if they loved me more, they would know that I'm a pretty big skeptic. I only accept liturgically commemorated miracles.
Yeah.
I'm not very fast.
They don't know that. They don't know that about you.
They don't know. It's like this came up. I was attacked by a Roman Catholic because they screen capped me saying something skeptical about holy fire. Right? Oh no, Eastern Orthodox said something skeptical about holy fire. I'm not going to say it's not occurring, but I will say this. One of the bishops, the Jerusalem patriarch that takes part in it personally, says it's not occurring. So for me to at least be fair and rational, I have to say, well, unless it's liturgically commemorated, it's fair game to be somewhat critical of this. We're not forbidden to be critical thinkers about miracles. We ought to be. And there seems to be this thing like we have to accept every single thing the miraculous. And No, unless it's like today's our liturgical commemoration, the 7 Ephesian youths that came back to life and stuff. So we commemorate really crazy miracles, crazy awesome miracles. The craziest, awesomest miracle I've ever seen was someone bend valves on a Opel motor in a Cadillac. Okay, did a cylinder leak down test. Those valves were bent, and he positively refused to put the head off the motor and get it fixed. That motor, when he put it back together, worked, which is scientifically impossible.
Yeah.
So again, it's not that I've seen miracles proved out with scientific instruments. Okay, it's not that I doubt the miraculous. It's just that I have a high critical threshold for miracles. It's, it's not like because of the debate.
I get it.
I was critical. Is that it?
There's a book published by St. Vladimir Seminary Press. Hold on. Let me see. Okay, it's showing now. Marian Apparition Zaytun by Travis Dumsday. And it goes into Zaytun, published by the EOs. And I like it. I think it should be looked into.
It should be looked into because Mary really appearing is an awesome thing.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me is when we if something is actually miraculous and it's real and it's good, then we defend it with lies. Saint Job criticizes the friends to not defend God with lies. Right? They're trying to do a good thing. They're trying to justify God, but they're justifying God wrongly, and God condemned them.
Right.
So the Theotokos doesn't want. Let's say she really did it. She doesn't want to hear made-up stories that she stopped the persecution when Nasser was doing that more than like 10 years before, because he's a secularist, right? Like it's or there's the claim all these Muslims converted to Coptic Orthodoxy. Okay, a fair thing is like, what's our proof of this? And it's like, oh well, we can't have names or no because of persecutions, which again could be true, but then you can't make the claim. Or at least you have to say, listen, my great-grandfather was Muslim, and my grandfather and whole family became Coptic Orthodox through this. Yes, it's anecdotal, but at least I'll listen, right? Like, because there's something to go by.
Yeah.
Something random on the internet doesn't qualify as evidence to me. And so that's the thing. So people know I have a high critical threshold for miracles. I will be vague about this because it's something still being looked into. There was something potentially miraculous happening at Holy Trinity Monastery. So I didn't tell anybody. I used my son as like the control group to kind of see, what are you experiencing here? Because he's a kid, what's he know, right?
Yeah.
And then I wait to see, does it keep occurring? Is this one off? Then I escalate. I go to the bishop, right? I didn't go take to the internet, go, everyone come here and go do pilgrimages at Holy Trinity. I was more circumspect, and I'm still circumspect. I'm not sure what's occurring. And so my point in bringing this up is because I have a respect for the miraculous, that I don't just accept everything just because. And one Protestant told me that a lot of this is a response to the atheists, that like a lot of even Protestants double down on these claims are miraculous because it's a kind of this response against the materialist worldview. But as someone who's very comfortable not being an epistemic materialist, like I think materialism is ignorant and indefensible, I don't need to do that with any miracle.
Right.
So anyway, it could have occurred, but I'm very suspicious because I don't see the clear fruit, right? I don't see a battle that was won that protected Orthodox people. I don't see mass conversion. Like it seems to me a spectacle, and the saints aren't interested in mere spectacle.
Right. Yeah.
The cross that appeared over Jerusalem, according to the hagiographies, converted tons of people.
Yeah.
Right. This was a time when pagans, somewhere, if you started in the 4th century, was majority pagan. By the end of the 4th century, became majority Christian. Right. How do you do this? Well, there were miracles. There's cross appeared in the sky. So it's like Cyril of Jerusalem talks, Saint Cyril of Jerusalem talks about. So it's I don't deny the miraculous. but there's ways to discern the miraculous. And you would hope that someone Oriental Orthodox would say, I disagree with Craig, but he is pointing out a legitimate means in which we are to discern spiritual things, which is the point. It's the point. So, anyways.
So the book that I mentioned, it is an evidential inquiry. So the inquiry here is about evidence. So maybe it'll answer.
I don't have the book. When are you coming to New York? Because let's hang out when we could.
Oh, man, I would love to. Whenever
you're not married, you got nothing but time and money.
Yeah. Let me know when's good for you, and I'll come. I want to come before it snows. I don't want to be
before it snows.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about that off air. It'd be cool to do a hangout and stuff, and what do they call it? Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. And you'd find the local Macedonian priest probably like you a lot. He has a soft spot for the Oriental Orthodox. Beautiful. In an interesting way, he's very conservative.
Yeah, I noticed the Yugoslavians, they like us.
Well, you know what he said? They really fast during Lent. They just have a pocket full of bread. They don't mess with the soy milk and this and that. Like, they know where it's at.
Yeah.
We got this host a meetup. Yeah, we'll have to see. It's we'll definitely have to get people on board to do a hangout. It's honestly, if you're going to the canon law conference, that'd be an obvious one. It's for the winter.
I know. I didn't. So the first year they invited me, so that's why I went. I thought it's like an annual invitation. I didn't know.
Well, let me tell you what. If you want to just hang out with me and people in the public, hang out in Boston. Yeah. You want to hang out in my house and in my hood, then we'll do that privately.
Well, whatever you prefer. I left Boston when I went. It was beautiful.
It depends. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it. I'm fine with either.
Girls were coming up to me and everything. We don't have that here.
The latter, in some respects, would be more apologetically convenient because it'd be more of a scene. But privately, I think we'd have more fun privately.
Okay, I think so too.
There you go. See, I guilted you. You're single, nothing but money and time. Well, anyway, guys, this was a show about building the wall. We went 2 hours. This is Bless You. Please bless missionary work in Cambodia at orthodoxchristiantheology.com/donate. Links are below. We got only $800 more to go. And every single dollar is matched. You don't get this very often. So please, please, please be generous. And it also does me a big favor because then I don't have to keep doing the accounting for this. It's paid for, and then I'm done, and I can move on to other endeavors. So please support the Church of Cambodia, orthodoxchristiantheology.com/donate. Use the word wall in the memo. We are still translating saints' lives into Khmer. And so if you want to be part of some other ministry, feel free to donate to that as well. We have thank you here. And thank you, everyone, for listening to us. And thank you so much, Subdeacon, for joining us in the show today.
Thank you, Craig Habibi. I was happy to be on with you.
And I'll end the show as I end all of them by quoting Jesus' rock. Fight to death for the truth, and the Lord God will fight for you. God bless you. Have a great day.